The bike itself, 1927 Indian Scout. This was the bike of choice for the Wall of Death. We put a lot of time and effort into reviving it from its past life. Let's get this thing fired up.
While it aired, American Restoration was a reality TV series that reigned supreme in its own right. It didn't have a lot of competition and was the one TV show to watch if you were interested in the restoration of vintage artifacts. Despite technically being a spin-off of Pawn Stars, a show about pawnshops, American Restoration found a way to stand on its footing. The show started on Pawn Stars, where a restoration expert called Rick was often invited to help the Pawn Stars deal with restoring vintage pieces that were brought into the shop.
I'm Rick with Rick's Restorations in Las Vegas, and I'm the guy that can restore anything. The pawn guys have been bringing me things for years, and they're trying to stump me one way or the other, and that still hasn't happened.
On Pawn Stars, Rick proved himself to be knowledgeable, competent, and reliable. He also displayed a knack for the theatrical, and that convinced the showrunners that a spin-off series about Rick and his restoration business would make good television. Interestingly, Rick didn't believe that he could pull off his reality show and was at first quite hesitant about going on the journey. However, he was soon proven wrong when American Restorations went on to be one of the most popular shows to air on the History Channel. The show, at its beginning, was centered around the life and shop of Rick and his vintage restoration business, Rick's Restorations. At Rick's Restorations, the show followed a team of experts as they took on challenging restoration jobs and tried to make it as a whole as they could. The show was rather successful during its lifetime too, with the History Channel backing it for 7 seasons. However, at the end of the 7th season, the History Channel decided not to air the show anymore and canceled it. Over the last few years, there has been a lot of speculation as to why the show ended. Some say that the show ended because of problems with the producers of the show. Others even argued that the show was fake and Rick's Restorations didn't exist. But that particular theory has been debunked several times, as Rick himself was only too happy to take on the restoration work of famous people like Billy Joel and Jason Mraz. A lot has been said about it, but yet fans still don't know the real reason why the show had to end. What was the real reason behind the show ending? In this video, we'll be exploring the American Restoration, and we'll be telling you the real reason why the show ended. The first thing we'll be talking about is the misunderstanding that a lot of people have when they talk about the end of the American Restoration. They believe that the show ended in the 7th season simply because that was the last season of the show. But that's not true. The show instead ended in the 6th season, and we'll explain how. When the last episode of the 6th season of the show aired in 2014, many people expected to see Rick and his family again in the 7th season. Remarkably, that didn't happen, and when the show aired again in 2016, Rick was nowhere to be found. The first sign that things were not great with the American Restoration was the fact that the 7th season took almost 2 years to produce. After a 6th season in 2014, a lot of fans expected that the show would return in 2015. But that wasn't to be, as the show only came back in 2016, and when it did, it was with a different cast and, tellingly, a different format. In the first 6 seasons of the American Restoration, there was a clear format to the filming. The camera crew would simply focus on one family and business and would follow their journey as they tried to fix stuff up. But the 7th season introduced a massive twist to that tested and trusted method of following only one family and one shop. Instead of one shop being the star of the show, the 7th season had the show following 5 different stores and their restoration adventures. And incredibly, none of the 5 shops was Rick's Restorations. As expected, this new format didn't do very well with the fans, and the 7th season was the last season to air on the History Channel. The 7th season was simply too unpopular, and the History Channel decided to cut their losses and pull the plug on it. This means that the question about how the American Restoration got canceled can only be answered by investigating the relationship of Rick Dale with the show. What happened to Rick, and why wasn't he in the 7th season? The answers to both of those questions are incredibly fuzzy. However, what we know for certain is that after the 6th season of the American Restoration, he and his family were fired from the show. The reason? Well, no one knows. That's right, we are almost certain that that question is one that Rick Dale himself cannot answer. The firing of Rick Dale and his entire family came as a huge shock to them and even some insiders. While there were some rumors about internal problems and low ratings, those rumors have never been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The rumors about low ratings are also very difficult to believe because American Restoration, at the height of its popularity, was seen in over 87 countries. It also aired 126 episodes in 5 years and had around 3 million viewers per week. To top that all up, the show had the highest rating ever on History Channel with 6.5 million viewers for the episode American Restoration Pick, Pawn, and Polish. The truth of the matter is we simply don't know why Rick Dale was fired. After he was fired, Rick Dale made a video where he apologized to fans of the show for leaving and thanked them for watching the show. During the video, one can see that Rick was trying his best not to cry and was very saddened by the prospects of leaving the show. But one thing stood out in the video, and it was this. He told his fans to go to the American Restoration website and air their grievances about the show firing him. While this on its surface might carry a hint of revenge, it may also mean something else. Dale telling his fans to register their grievances on the show's website may be his way of telling the showrunners that he's indeed popular and that the direction they are choosing to go in may not be the best for the show. If that's the case, it's possible that the reason Dale and his family were fired was that the showrunners believed they were not essential to the show and that the show needed to go in another direction. Of course, the failure of the 7th season of the show would prove that belief wrong. Now, it's important to remember that this is still a theory and hasn't been proven by hard facts. It's just a deduction based on the circumstances of Dale's firing and what he said about it. But it's a pretty convincing theory regardless. So, what's Rick Dale and the gang doing right now? Well, Rick's Restorations, the shop that the first 6 seasons of the show revolved around, is owned by Rick Dale and is a real business. However, the evidence we have right now suggests that the shop in Las Vegas has shut down and is no longer in operation. This, of course, fuels the conspiracy theory that Rick's Restorations wasn't a real business. But that's untrue, as the business has done a lot of verifiable restoration work. Interestingly, the shop's website is still up and running. Of course, Rick and his family are no longer starring in any TV shows. They are simply no longer on television. But he's still very active on social media, and he has a very visible Instagram footprint. His handle, @OfficialRicksRestorations, has over 100,000 followers. He also has a very active Facebook page, where you can catch up with his family. Judging by that page, Rick now enjoys a laid-back life, and his wife Kelly, who was the administrative backbone of Rick's Restorations, now works in real estate. Aside from that, Rick has set up a custom embroidery and custom laser cut shop called My Best Font Forward Creations in Las Vegas. They sell a bunch of cool merchandise there, such as Christmas hangings, laser cut decors, and more. He's also taken up writing and has published a book called Classic Soda Machines. But Rick wasn't the only restoration expert on the show. His sons Tyler and Brettley were also actively involved in restorations. Both of them are still in the restoration business, with Tyler working freelance with different customers and businesses. Brettley, on the other hand, has set up his own business called Clean Works Blasting in Las Vegas. He is also active on Instagram. American Restoration was a very popular show, and its change in format and subsequent cancellation came as a shock to many people. While the reasons for the cancellation of the show aren't quite clear, one thing is obvious. Rick and his family were a huge part of the show's appeal, and their firing indirectly led to the cancellation of the show. Will the History Channel ever work on getting the old gang together? That seems unlikely now, given that Rick's Restorations, the business the most successful seasons of the show was about, isn't in existence anymore. However, this is show business, and in show business, you never say never.